Hey, good morning, culinary students. Chef Mitchell here. This morning I'm coming to you from my mother-in-law's kitchen. Thanks a lot, Kathy, for letting me use the space over here. Much appreciated. All right, today we're going to start in with our lean dough. And like I got that ratio over here. You know me, I'm always talking about ratios. So we're talking about 5 parts flour to 3 parts water. In this case, we're going to use 20 ounces of flour to 12 ounces of water. When we're talking about ratios, we're talking about weight. All right, because we haven't had a chance to do the exercise together, but you'll see a cup of water put on a scale is not nearly equivalent to a cup of flour put on the scale. That's why when we're talking about ratios, it's based on weight. All right, so I've got 12 ounces of water here, which, yeah, right up there. We want to see the parabola. That's the bottom of that. You see there's a little thickness to that stripe of water right there. The parabola, the bottom of it, where it's not clinging, but where it's reaching down to the bottom. That's where we want to line up. Right there on 12 ounces, which is also a cup and a half. So a cup and a half. Now that water needs to be warm water, all right? Around about 100 degrees. The easiest way to tell is just to run the water on your hand. If it's hot to the touch, that's too hot. It's going to kill your yeast as soon as it gets in there. If it feels about body temperature, that feels warm. That's very close to 100 degrees, and that's going to be perfect for your yeast. It's just like when we talked about ServSafe and preventing bacterial growth. The bacteria in the yeast is the same thing. When it gets activated in that warm water, it's going to multiply. I forget the big word number for it. Anyway, all right. So you're going to take your 1 packet of yeast, or some of you have individual tablespoons that I just portioned out into Ziploc bags. All right, dump it all in the water here. Get it all in there. And if you're not using the ones I provided or one of these packets, this Fleischmann's Active Dry Yeast, that's a good one, or the Red Star Active Dry Yeast. Those are the ones that's just like I told you about with my rice dishes. That's my confidence. I got confidence in these brands. That's the ones I'm used to using. All right, so we get that a good mix. Sometimes I'll even put a little sprinkle of sugar in there just to rev up that yeast, get a little bit of a sugar high, if you will. All right, now for our flour, we're going to do 20 ounces. Now I know not everybody's going to have a kitchen scale at home. I looked it up on a conversion. It says 4.5 cups of flour is more or less equivalent to 20 ounces. So let's go ahead and test that out real quick. So I've got a little kitchen scale here. Turn this on. The mode is set to ounces. That's perfect. I'm going to set an empty bowl. And on this one, I hit a 0 button, or sometimes it says tare. That takes away the weight of the bowl you're beginning with. All right, so let's see if I can do this quickly before it shuts off. All right. I'll make it a little more accurate than that. All right. So a full, now this is a dry measuring cup, either like this or a metal cup. All right, there's one that gives us 4.7. I want to make sure you're not packing it full, but you're just scooping it and then leveling it off flush. There's 2. Okay. Hopefully it comes out pretty ballpark. That'll work out nicely for everybody. All right, here's 3. 4, what's that got us at? 18.7. All right, so now let's get that half a cup. I'm thinking we're not going to use the entire half cup. Let's get a better idea here. 18.7, 19, yeah. So for me there, that was more like 4.25 cup of flour, all right? And that came up to 20.2 ounces. We like a lot of accuracy when we're talking about making breads. We've talked a lot about with our savory cooking that there's forgiveness, and we've talked, you might make a mistake in the kitchen and the folks at the table never know because it still turns out great. Baking, well, when you're experienced with it, there are certain elements that you can fudge a little bit, but the ratio is not one of them. You want to make sure your flour to water ratio is accurate. All right. So now we've got our yeast and water over here blooming. We've got our flour measured. Next thing we're going to get is our salt. We're going to use 1 tablespoon of salt. Yep. Not my heart-shaped measuring spoons, but they ought to work. All right, go ahead and level that out. All right, so like we've done with our cookies or other baking items we've done, our dry side first. All right, and you want to have a bowl that's big enough that you can just mix it right in the bowl. Or you also, if you got a nice counter like this, you can pour it right out on the counter and do your mixing and kneading right there. All right. Now here's a batch that of the yeast and water I mixed up a little earlier. It's already having a chance to bloom. You can see that yeast is dissolved. If it had a little longer to sit here, it would actually start foaming up and get a pretty good foamy head on the top. All right. Now this is definitely hands-on. You're gonna get in there and it's gonna be dirty, but you watch and see. It'll come clean by the time we're done here. All right. We're just folding together the liquid and the flour. And your hands are gonna be kind of gucky for a while. You just gotta work right through it. Okay? So right here, this is the starts of what we would call a shaggy dough. You see all those shreds in there? That's called a shaggy dough. We're gonna be working this dough until we get a nice and a smooth, stretchy dough. What we're gonna be doing here is creating the gluten. All right? That's going to be the gluten is going to be the protein that's in the flour, and we're going to work it until it starts to form into long strands of protein. We need that because essentially the dough is going to serve as a balloon for us. You'll see with the yeast as it's going to continue to multiply, and it's going to start once it gets blended in here. Well, now that it is in here, it's going to start to feed on the flour itself. And it's going to start excreting gases. And that's what's going to make our dough rise. Now I told you, like with our cookies, those are an example of a quick bread, meaning we leaven those with baking powder or baking soda. We don't have any time to wait. It's a quick bread, all right? But yeast bread's going to take considerably longer. Might take a good, 3-4 hours at room temperature for this thing to rise. If we're talking about using natural yeast like a sourdough, that could take 2-3 days sometimes with some recipes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this out to the counter because it's getting to that point for me. You see how the bowl's cleaned itself up real nicely? Now your hands are kind of gonna do the same here. All right, now this is my motion I prefer. I do a figure 8. Hold one side down, push it forward, back, forth. All right, and when you've got a nice counter like this that isn't going anywhere, to me, this is the best way to do it. It's kind of like pulling taffy if you've ever seen that done, all right? And you get a little bit of workout doing this too. If you're to make your own bread every day, you'll burn those carbs, no problem. All right. We need to get this to where the dough can stretch without ripping. You see that? That's not quite ready. All right, keep at it. And again, you can do this inside of a big mixing bowl if you don't have the counter space. I just like to do it this way. I like to get it out on the counter, and you'll see the loose dough bits on the counter, on your hands. They're all gonna pick up in that dough as we need. Don't laugh if I start sweating in here, you guys. All right. The other thing about this is we're putting a lot of friction into this. This motion and our body heat, it's all lending friction to it. All right. Like that little video I primed you guys up with yesterday on the bread making. They said no two batches is the same. The humidity from one day to the next, the temperature in the room from one day to the next, your own body temperature, all these things affect, the rise, and as well as the yeast, especially if you're using the natural sour yeast. It's not going to necessarily be consistent every time. All right, let's see what we got here. It's still rippy. All right, how long? I might cut it a little short, guys, because you know what? If these videos get too long, they are so hard to upload. But at home, again, like a lot of times when I shortchange you on the video work, don't shortchange your dough. Keep kneading that thing, all right? And you'll see, at first it felt so tacky, all right, and so sloppy. But look at it now. It's when you got the ratio right, your dough is not sticky, all right? When we get into some of those enriched doughs where we're using butter and eggs and sugar and oils, those are going to be a little bit more tricky to handle, but with a good lean dough on ratio, it is not going to be sticky at all. All right, I like where this is at. So take good note of the size of that thing right now. All right, 4 hours, that thing will be doubled up in size. And then what we're gonna do is come back, punch it down, let all the gas out of it, make it rise up one more time. That double rise is gonna really develop some good flavor. All right, so I'm gonna put this in a bowl and I'm gonna cover it. Oh my goodness, I am out of breath over here. Yeah, COVID shake. Let's see if I can get this plastic started. Whew. Yeah. All right, now inside this bowl, the dough is going to create its own perfect environment. It's got its own warmth going in there. It's going to create its own steam. And it's going to just give itself a perfect environment. So just leave it in the bowl, covered just the way it is. That thing will reach up, touch the plastic. That plastic will start to balloon up from the extra gases building up. And it'll do exactly what it needs, just like this. All right, guys, I'm going to catch my breath, and I'll see you guys in class.